This is the world's smallest walk-in closet, and it belongs to my daughter Taya. Mrs. Sawdust wants me to do a little work in here and customize a closet for her. So come on inside, let me show you around as much as I can. It's a little bit of a tight fit. We only got about 12 inches space between the door and the wall. And then if we come over here, we got a dowel, space up top, and this cubby down here. We're gonna also have to figure out a carpet solution because the unit that I'm gonna build is gonna come all the way down to the carpet. So it's either new carpet or trim it. Stay tuned for that. On this side, come over here, if you can, because we don't got a lot of space in here. If we look over here, same setup. I think what we're gonna do is focus on this first and build a unit here. Then we're gonna work on that unit over there and then something with this wall. I think I got some ideas. But before we can do any of that, I need my daughter to clear out this room, throw out some stuff, and make it so we can demo what we have in here already before I even begin the project. So let's get to that. This closet shape and size is so unique and small. I love the challenge of maximizing the space to store as much as possible and making something that's nice to look at as well. And sticking with the theme of my other videos, you're not going to want to miss all the curveballs this project threw at me and viewer-cherished mistakes I made along the way. It would be easy to just throw up a bunch of bracket-supported shelves and call it a day, but that's not my style. I'm a woodworker, so naturally, I have to complicate things. Each side has this thing right here, this side, that side, and it should be pretty easy to demo. I got my demo tools. I think it's just a bunch of screws, cut around the edges and pry these things off. Hopefully I don't damage too much. I've always felt the demolition part of any project I take on really is the part where the suits put on the hard hats and throw a ceremonial shovel in the ground. For me, there's no turning back now. I'm committed. I mean, if I just gave up after the demo, my daughter loses all faith in me as a father, and Mrs. Sawdust starts looking for a new husband. Just one more side. Now that I got the blood pumping a little bit, it is at this point that I realize this closet could use a little ventilation. When that door closes, I can taste my own breath. Because the units that I'm gonna build are gonna come all the way to the ground, most of this baseboard isn't even needed. We're only gonna need to save just a little bit. But I'm gonna go ahead and just remove it all together right now, and then we'll put back the piece that we need after it's installed. I pretty much have all of my dimensional pieces right here that I can use to build the entire right side of the closet. I got 4 sheets of 4x8 paint grade maple plywood, 3/4 inch. I got 2 8-foot 2x3s, not 2x4s. Didn't even need to do that. It's cheaper. They're $2.75. It was easy. I got 5 strips, 9 feet long each of 1.5 inch primed pine trim. So with all of this, I can pretty much build the whole thing. I don't think there's anything else I need except a few odds and ends here, but I have scraps and things like that or leftovers from this for that. First thing I need to do is get these cut and shaped up for the frame of the base of this closet. So let's get to it. Is it me or did the Home Depot just start selling 2x3s? I swear I have never seen them until I found them for this project. Maybe this is the lumber market's way of responding to inflation. Even Steve Ramsey just released a video where he made a bar stool out of 2x3s. He lives just about 3 hours north of me, but I doubt it's just a California thing. Before I put all these pieces together, I want to make sure that this is gonna fit. So I measured 40 inches, but I know that side is a little different than this side, so I may have to make some micro adjustments. Let's see. Yeah, that's gonna be too tight, so I think I'm just gonna take a 1/4 inch off and see what I get. All right, let's try this one more time. That looks pretty good right there. All right, both of them fit pretty good. This is a tight spot, but it's time to put this stuff together. I've been asked, why do you drill a hole first and then drive the screw? Well, you'll see why right here. I ended up splitting the wood, but let me show you how I fixed it. I needed to pry the end of this stud open, so I drilled in another screw. Then I used gravity as my helper and stood it upright. I generously squirted as much glue as I could in the crack, removed the screw, and then clamped it in place until the glue dried. Now I can fasten 2 more screws in new pilot holes that I neglected the first time, and voila, it's like it never happened. And this frame is pretty much done after fastening the opposite side stud. All right, let's see if this fits. Fingers crossed. Now that we got this done, we can start building the cabinet. Now, just remember, this carpet is not gonna be here. We're gonna cut this short and re-tack it. But for the meantime, I'm not gonna worry about that till a little bit later. So let's get started on these cabinets. Izzy Swan says you should use his Grabo to easily move large sheets of plywood. Great tool if you are bad at recruiting help. Fortunately, each time I had to lift a 4x8 sheet of plywood, I would just find an unsuspecting victim around the house to help me out. Breaking down these sheets of plywood with accurate 90-degree cuts that are straight can be challenging without the right tools. I feel like my track saw and right angle guide helps out so much. I used a cut list to minimize waste, and to keep all the pieces organized, I numbered them according to the cut list. Well, here you have it. This is all the pieces it's going to take to build this side of the closet. Now, if you haven't already figured out, I'm doing one side in this video and one side in the other video because any mistakes that I make on the right side of the closet, hopefully I won't make when I do the left side of the closet. Now, I cut everything in advance for a reason because it's easier to manage. If I didn't screw up the cuts, this is great, but there is a risk with cutting them all in advance rather than as you go. I feel very confident in my skills that I have everything perfect. That's a total lie, but hopefully this works out great. I'm gonna put it all together. The important thing is that the front of the cabinets all line up flush together. The back I can have some mistakes or variables and that's fine, I'm not worried about that. But now it's time to put all this stuff together, so cross your fingers that it all goes well. I'm building this in 3 separate pieces. If I built one single unit, I wouldn't be able to fit it through the door since the ceiling is taller than the door and the unit is going from floor to ceiling. Another obstacle to contend with is the door trim on the inside of the closet, but more on that later. I have it in this position on the frame that's going to be in the room because I want to see how it looks. We're going to put it all together now. We're going to put the shelves in the rest of these pieces. I'm going to cut some spacers so I can get the shelves at the right height because you don't want it high here and then low in the back. And I think we're just going to assemble it right here. That way we can make sure our seams all line up and these all line up just right for when we put the trim up. I got to cut those spacers. Quick thought. I want to know if any of you are like me. Ever since I started woodworking, I find myself looking at things a lot differently. Every time I go into a store, I'm looking at how everything is constructed and designed. I was at a poke bowl restaurant yesterday grabbing some to-go food for Mrs. Sawdust, and I found myself mentally dissecting how their suspended planters were constructed. I studied what wood they were made of. I noticed some of the miter corners had some gaps. Was it wood movement, or was it a mistake the maker made? I paid attention to the reveals and transitions of each piece. I can't sit in a wooden chair anymore without considering the time and effort it took to make that chair, and how much they should have charged for making it, and how much they were probably underpaid. Every tabletop I see now makes me think about the finish, and I look for any irregularities the craftsmen had to deal with, or even caused themselves. Did they make the legs? Did they buy them and just bolt them in? I'm always looking for ideas to incorporate into my own woodworking, and looking for inspiration. I know I can't be the only one, so tell me what you think. Tell me how you relate. Leave a comment below. I want to be as accurate as I can when I'm nailing in here, but I can't see anything. I don't know where to nail. So we're going to create a line by taking this piece right here, which is not secure yet, it's just sitting there on the spacers. And I'm going to hit the middle point right here and just draw a line so I know where my nail line is, both sides. And now, as long as I aim for that line, I should hit pretty much near the center of the board sitting horizontal inside. This piece is done, and now I gotta build the one that goes next to it. This came along pretty darn good. It's very square. I'm very happy with the way it came out. There's just little techniques along the way that you have to do to get everything to be just right and square. So it looks nice. So when we put the trim up, everything lines up and it's not all cattywampus. But before I go into building this one, I just wanted to give a quick plug to a podcast that I've been listening to lately. And I'm only recommending this because I really like it and I think that my audience would really like it too. Two guys do this podcast called Off the Cut, and it's with Eric Spenceley from Spenceley Design Co. and Zach from Zach Builds. They have YouTube channels as well that I enjoy, and they put this podcast together. And I gotta say, they're actually really good. They talk about woodworking, they talk about content creation, they talk about whatever's going on in their lives. They kind of tie it all together, and they have a really good chemistry that comes across really fluid on a podcast. Just want to put that out there. They don't know I'm giving this recommendation, but for you guys, I'm doing it for you, so go check it out. I think they deserve the listen, and I think you will enjoy it a lot. So I'll put a link somewhere in the description. Check it out. Whenever I tell someone I'm a woodworker, they always ask me, what do you like to make? And my response is, anything I haven't already made. This is probably an unsatisfying response to most people, but it really is the truth. I think I would get bored making the same thing over and over again. And there are projects that I have made that, although were a great build, I really wouldn't want to do them over again. It's my latest design and my most recent woodworking thoughts that really get me excited. Sometimes my mind leaps to another project before I'm finished with the one that I'm already working on. In order for these two pieces to sit flush together and look perfect, I needed to clamp them together. So when I install this, I'm gonna have to do something to tack these together, maybe put a little glue and clamp just along the way. And then when I put the trim on, it won't want to separate. But overall, I'm pretty happy with the way it's going. All I need is the shelf right here, and these two pieces are completely done, and we can do the upper deck portion. Let's get that done. Capping off the bottom cubby was pretty much more of the same thing. I think the key is to always use identical spacers, so the square is square, or in this case, the rectangle is square. Not much in the world makes Mrs. Sawdust more happy than an abundance of storage. So no space will be wasted, and that's why I'm building a cubby cabinet for what I like to call upper deck storage. That's what makes her happy, and what makes me happy is building it. It really does. Building things and making stuff in my shop with my tools brings a level of happiness and satisfaction that is hard to rival. You know, it reminds me of a song I heard recently by Hardy. It's called Happy. Hardy really is a modern-day poet above anything else, and he talks about happy as if he is a person and not just a feeling. There is a line in the song that reads, "Dollar bills and gold and pearls ain't never been his style." That really rings true to me. It's often the process of making that brings me happiness, and I believe that if more people started creating rather than consuming, we'd all be a lot happier. I have all three of the cabinets done, and I say that in air quotes, because I just realized I forgot something. These sit nicely on top of each other, on top of the base, but what's going to prevent them from, let's say, falling over? I need to put in brace, I'll call them brace supports. I don't know what the technical term is, but I need something that I can then take the impact driver and drill into a stud in the wall. So I'm gonna mount them up here on both of these, and then somewhere on that other cabinet right there. That should be pretty easy. It's just a pocket holes and, I don't know, 3 inches of wood or something like that. So get that done. Before I commit to any further in this project, I want to basically dry fit the carcasses, the cabinets, in this space just to make sure I didn't mess up on the measurements, the width and the height. In order to do that, I have to pull back this carpet because this carpet is raising up my original measurements. I counted this carpet not being there because we're gonna go all the way to the floor. Things were going fairly smoothly up until this point, but there's a reason why dry fitting these cabinets is a must. The cabinets were square and even, but the walls were not. Check out what happened.
Is it catching on something?
It's just a little tight. The other thing is, I was thinking about taking, since this is a point of friction, if you take the belt sander and just make that a little thinner.
Just like the lower half here, you mean?
Yeah, just take down, you know, and then it'll probably fit in a lot better. And just like that, I'm back in the shop, basically destroying my hard work with a belt sander to make this thing fit. I'll be honest, it felt so wrong. So wrong. But no one will ever know, unless they watch this video. But so far, YouTube has made me feel pretty confident that'll never happen. With that grinded down, Mrs. Sawdust had other things to do, so I was left by my lonesome to see if my efforts were in vain or in victory. Initially, I figured out that this cabinet was still not going to just slide right in, but after some thought, I went over the top, Stallone style, and wouldn't you know it,
You got it! Hold it up!
it fit like a glove. When looking for studs, I found a stud right here in the middle, and I found a stud right here. But when I put my stud buddy that's magnetized on here, it's not picking up any drywall nails. I'm frankly a little nervous to drill into that because I'm not so confident that it is a stud back there. I don't know if it's electrical or a water line. I don't know. I don't think it would be a water line or electrical. I can't imagine why. This is an exterior wall. So I'm just gonna cut a patch out. I marked the line where this will all be covered anyways. So I'm just gonna cut a little patch out just to see what's back there. This is great news. So we're just gonna put this back up. Got a stud, although there's no nails in it. So I guess it's just more structural than it is needing to get this secure. So glad we found it. Gonna put the hole back up, move forward. We wanted to see how the upper deck storage cabinet would fit, and good thing we did. We knew the door had to go, so we popped the pins and got it out of the way. When we realized the door hinges would have to go too. Well, we tried bringing that piece in here, but this trim is in the way. We're not able to get it in. I have two choices. I can sand down the side of it and just shrink the piece, which takes a long time, or I can just remove the trim on the inside of here. I'm gonna remove all three pieces, 1, 2, and 3, because we'll be building on this side as well with the next video. I don't wanna do it, but it's a necessary evil, and it'd be a good little practice, so. All right, let's try this.
And a kiss.
It worked!
Yay! Wow, that looks awesome. It's so crazy because it makes this closet look bigger.
Look at that.
It looks huge. Like it looks like we just added so much more space. Just wait till we get that side in.
Pretty awesome. With our emotional and mental tanks refueled with motivation and inspiration, I dispatched our resident painter, Mrs. Sawdust, to paint the inside of the closets and cabinets. Look at her go. This closet is finally starting to actually look like something. So we reinstalled the cabinets in the closet. A little help from Mrs. Sawdust up these stairs and over the top was much appreciated. And we just need to shim it. I always try to give credit where credit is due, but for the life of me, I could not figure out which woodworker I saw on Instagram making shims in this way. I just happened upon this method the very day I had to make a bunch of shims to secure and level out the closet cabinets. I thought it was brilliant, so if you know who it is, then let me know and I'll link them in the description. In the end, I was able to make 19 shims. This one didn't turn out so well, but these did very well. And for now on, in the future, I got myself a shim jig. I got all the shims in at the pressure points, not in the middle right here, but right where the panels touch each other. I also have some back here to bring it forward so I can make this flush as well as back there. As you can see all down there at the pressure points, These walls are so uneven that it requires a lot of shims, but it's nice and stable now. I'm gonna trim off these edges. Of course, we chipped a little bit of paint here and there, and we can touch that up. That's not a big deal. But then I'm gonna cut these off, drill in these so it secures to the wall as well as up there. And then we should be ready for the trim. So not too shabby, looking pretty good. One audible that I did was I put 2 shims here so that I could tack them in here and tack them in here. And it just so happens I used all 19 of my shims. That's all I needed, perfectly. Because of these tight spots, some of these nails are sticking out, so I got these Craftsman nail hole punches or whatever they're called. And they just recess them right in. Just put a little wood filler over that and paint over it, and you'll never know what happened. These plywood edges needed to come together because the trim is 1.5 inches wide, and the actual combined width of 2 plywood edges is just shy of 1.5 inches. So I squeezed in some wood glue as much as I could and used clamps to bring them together. I didn't want the clamps to ruin the paint, so I used rags as a barrier. But I ran into one little problem. When I removed the rags, as expected, the rags stuck to the wood. So with the chisel, I removed any of the remaining pesky fabric. I've had this piece of trim sitting around for quite some time. It's a baseboard that I used for a previous project. I'm gonna cut this up for the base trim and then use one of these for the top trim. Just gotta get them perfect and then we'll move on from there. In the effort to make sure all these seams lined up just perfectly, not this of course, but up there, this side ended up being lower than this side, about a 1/4 inch, if not even 1/3 of an inch. So the trim piece is going to be narrower here and wider over here. Fortunately, I have a new taper jig to make this cut easy. Unfortunately, my miter slots in my outfeed table are a hair too short to make this cut hassle-free. Of course, raising the blade made solving this problem pretty easy. Installing the base trim was the easy part. The top and sides proved to be a bit more challenging. Because straight edges and wonky walls don't line up that well, I used double-sided tape to temporarily secure my trim piece to the cabinet and used a scribing tool to find the exact template to cut that would hug the curves of the wall. I just followed that line on the bandsaw, and with my precision hand-steady skills, voila! Now there are no more gaps, and I actually look like I know what I'm doing. For the side trim, I used the same process, but this time I used a pencil and a washer to scribe the profile. Reason being, this trim is only 1.5 inches wide, and my scribing tool would have taken a little more off than I wanted. When using a washer, you can really minimize the amount that gets cut off by selecting a custom washer ring width. The only downside is it can be a little more difficult to manage both the pencil and the washer. I was feeling pretty confident in my bandsaw skills after cutting out the scribed line of the top trim piece. So with my chin in the air and a head full of pride, I cut out the left side trim, and well, it didn't go so well. There were a bunch of gaps and it looked pretty bad. So I humbled myself, took a little more time, and did much better on the right trim piece. But for the record, this is not an easy cut, and if you ever attempt this, my advice is slow and steady actually does win the race. While you watch me put the remaining trim on this custom closet, I'll have you know that I'll be including a list of affiliate links you can click on in the video description of all the tools and products I use in this build. Feel free to support Dude Sawdust at no extra cost to you by clicking on those links and shopping around for whatever you need for your next project. Have you ever had a conversation with someone about something you're passionate about where they just nod and smile a lot? I think we're all guilty of talking about things that we are interested in. You see, when people come by the house for whatever reason, I find myself luring them into my wood shop to talk to them about my latest project and newest tools. Usually they have no background in woodworking, but seem genuinely interested in what I have to say. I'm likely giving them in-depth details about my track saw or showing off some woodworking tip that they could really care less about. But I think it brings out the best in people when they try their hardest to seem interested in what I'm showing them. People are generally good, and I think we actually want to support each other. I'm curious if any of you are like me or have had these experiences. If you have any thoughts about this topic, feel free to leave a comment. This is now my third video about building things for my daughter Taya's room. Each one of them have been fun and challenging projects that have compelled me to learn new skills, challenge what I already know, and stretch my design skills and creativity. I tend to fumble my way through these projects, making plenty of mistakes along the way. It's given me some time to reflect on what I'm actually doing here. I find that with each cut that I make, every nail that's plunged, and every fastener that I drive, I'm not only taking a step-by-step approach to finishing some project, but I'm also slowly chipping away one shard at a time on the boulder that is me. You see, I turned 44 this month, and let's face it, I'm probably past the halfway mark of my lifespan. I haven't had some midlife crisis, but starting a YouTube channel and taking on a new hobby that will likely be my next career just might be one. I have no desire to buy a sports car or leave my wife and kids for some perceived greener turf that is likely dead crabgrass and thorns, but maybe a jointer and a drum sander would be nice. I mean, I've made it this far in life without being a scourge on society, so I can honestly say that I've always been one of the proverbial passengers on the boat of life who's grabbed a paddle and helped row. That being said, I think in my 44th year of life, I'm going to keep moving onward and upward in my woodworking journey. I have a lot of things I want to build and design, and I really feel that I'm just getting started. So I'm going to keep chipping away on this boulder that is me. It's starting to take shape and the statue is far from complete, so as this channel takes shape, I would just ask that you follow along and support this channel by just watching. And watch the whole video if you could. YouTube gives me a boost in exposure when it knows my viewers keep watching my content, and I hope to always strive to bring you value. This closet is far from over, and my next video will likely be building the other side of this closet. It's going to be different than this side and have new challenges and features, so be patient because Taya sure has been. And I'll see you again on the other side of this closet.